Hello, hello, everyone. Jamie Trull here, your favorite CPA and financial literacy coach. And I'm so excited for today. We have a special guest that I'm going to be bringing on in just a minute. And we're going to be doing something a little different than what we normally do around here. So we're usually talking about numbers. We'll touch on that a little bit. But I want to talk about strategic planning in general and really thinking about it from a team perspective. So if you have a team at all, if you are a leader at all, even if it is a very small company, my company is just myself and 3 full-time employees, but there is so much that we really need to think about when it comes to planning that isn't just about numbers. And so we're going to talk to Sarah Bettman. She is a leadership coach who I'm going to bring up in just a minute, who just worked with my team. And I was just so excited, loved the exercises that we did with her, and really wanted to show her to all of you and get you thinking about your team and how to have the best year ever with your team next year. So with no more ado about it, I'm going to bring Sarah in. All right. Hey, Sarah. So I will say I've been wanting to have Sarah on here for a little while, and I've been wanting to work with Sarah. I've known her for several years now. And this year, usually I have a retreat with my team. We go somewhere. We're all together in person. I really recommend it. My team is all virtual, so it's all over the place. And this year, we just couldn't get all the schedules to align and the travel schedules. So we decided, you know what, we're just going to do it virtually. And we were trying to think about, we always want to bring in a speaker to do kind of some development work with us. And this year, Sarah just popped in my mind. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the opportunity to get Sarah in to really work with our team and do some of her amazing leadership coaching. So I just wanted to bring her on here. We can talk a little bit about what we did as a team. But first, Sarah, come and just introduce yourself to the audience. Tell them a little bit about you and about your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a leadership coach. I do a lot of work around culture for organizations, and even small organizations. Yes, you have a culture, whether you think you need it or not. And one of the things that I have found in my life is the most significant relationship we have is with our work. We spend most of our working hours with work. So I actually play both sides. I kind of jokingly lead stoked and live stoked, and really help organizations begin in integrity and basically be the kind of organization internally, behaviorally, that they say they are. And that gets increasingly more complicated the bigger you are. So small organizations working with you was just great because there's still a lot of control and ability to be in integrity. But the other side to it, and it was a little bit of what we touched on and Live Stoked, is we as individuals are trying to accomplish our life's goal and work. And we sometimes make mistakes in getting into jobs that in our head seem right. But when we back up and stop and think about it, and I know, Jamie, part of your story was like wake up call, like, whoa, no more corporate. I have that story. So where we intersect in work and life is where I play. And I work both sides of the coin, and this idea of let's take some time and pause and figure out what we really want. We want as an organization, who we are and how we can walk our talk, and also as an individual. So that relationship, that most significant relationship. And I know kids, significant others, and everything seems significant, but you sleep half the time you're with them anyway. So totally different. But the point is, I think a lot of the people I coach, angst, the entry in to angst is around work dynamics, team dynamics, not accomplishing goals. And so that's what I do. And I work with everything from large corporations to smaller, small companies to individuals. So.
And I do think it's so important to think about kind of the work and life, because I used to think that the goal was kind of that balance between work and life. And I don't even know that that's a thing, or it is a thing maybe, but it's like the seasons and what balance looks like to you in those seasons, right? And I think as an entrepreneur, there's so much more melding that happens. I mean, my kids are home right now. They're upstairs playing Xbox, hopefully for the rest of this video. But there is just this melding. Oh, speaking of which, come on. This is real life right here. This is real life. Just say hi. This is real life.
Hi, so, little B.
You know, there is a melding. I am currently working and at home with the kiddos. So thanks, bud.
I swear we didn't plan that.
No,
not at all.
Angry dad is at the door. But I mean, the real situation, right? There is this melding that happens a lot of times, especially if you're a home-based entrepreneur. But I think just small business owners, entrepreneurs in general, it's just kind of this amalgamation of like, it's hard to know where one stops and the other begins. But yeah, it really is this just fusing of the two. And so we really have to look at them together. And that's true for probably most of the people that you employ as well, right? They have lives, they have families, they have all these things integrated. And we have to think about that as a leader. And I want to respond to your point too, Sarah, about like, even when you're really small, there's a corporate culture, whether you know it or not. Right? So you probably want to know what it is because it exists and your employees know what it is, even if you don't. And I think that was something that really took me a little while to go from this little startup that was just me to hiring contractors and then eventually hiring full-time employees. There's a shift in there that we have to make at some point to say, okay, I'm a leader of a team, right? I'm not just a business owner. I'm not just an entrepreneur. Now I lead a team. And how can I do that effectively? And how can I take my team into account in the decisions that I'm making, because now it's not just all about me, right?
Nope.
Yeah.
No, and I think that's one of the things, like, Live Stoked. I love it because it evokes, like, starting a business is the hardest thing I've ever done. And my last corporate gig was building a diversity inclusion program for a large Fortune 500.
Yeah.
Both of those were some of the scariest things I've ever done. And I used to be a paramedic firefighter, so that's saying something, right? But I was stoked about it because it was the growth spurt I wanted, right? And so when we talk about integration or whatever, I remember a leader speaking like, you get choices and none of them are right. But which one is going to allow you to be stoked? So if you're a parent, right, I choose to work or I choose to be with my kids. Well, there's something really empowering about working in such a way that your kids see you being able to build your own business, do your own growth spurt, learn. That's really meaningful to them, but it also then teaches them to speak up for when they need you and want you. And so that you're working together on behalf of the relationship you want to have together. Versus a lot of my clients, women and men, by the way, but women probably more so, they feel so much guilt. And I'm always like, have you talked to your kids about it? Did you talk to your significant other? And they sometimes haven't. So I think you're right in this sense of, how you show up is in that integration. If it's about, I want to accomplish my goals, and oh, by the way, I want you to accomplish your goals. And you have to know what they are. And you have the culture that supports it? Because the worst thing you could do is think you have the type of organization that people can come in and facilitate and live their goals, when in fact, that's just not possible. And that's that integrity piece. And that's where it gets squishy. It's like, oh, wait a minute, they're working on behalf of my goals. I can't actually facilitate their goals. And that's okay. No judgment, but just make sure they know, versus promising them that and then realizing it just doesn't make sense for whatever the business structure is for your business.
Yeah. I mean, you want to be aligned on that. That's so important. So that brings me to the exercise that we had you come in and do with us. So we decided to do it actually 2 days before we started our virtual retreat, because once we talked to you, we realized, oh, this is such a great foundational thing to start off with, right? To really get us in the mindset that we need to be in. I tend to be a person that, okay, we have a retreat, like we need to make a strategic plan. Let's jump into the numbers. Let's jump into all the things, right? And I am just like tactical from second one. And one of the things that I learned from Sarah that worked so well was saying, okay, maybe we start this a little bit differently. So let's talk about, we did the exercise best year ever with you, which was so great. And I think the team really enjoyed it, even though they were nervous at first. I think they really got into it, like over the time period that we did it. But talk to us a little bit about that and why you recommend coming at it from kind of that more high level place than from that tactical place.
Yeah, so there's a couple things that are part of that. When you strategic plan for tactical, it's exhausting. I think we've all been in those meetings, even just with our family. Where are we going on vacation? It's just exhausting. So what you want to evoke, and this is nothing special around coaching, is this idea of what's the ideal state at some point in the future. So this is a year. It's perfect time for a year. The difference is I actually turned it into a drawing exercise, which is horrifying usually for my audiences, as it was for your team. But it takes you into a different channel. And even if you feel anxious about the drawing or whatever, it evokes something different, and it creates spaciousness where if you just started talking about it, you'd stay very tactical to the limit of whatever you do. And so for me, it's always important to set the tone and create some sort of experience that's meaningful, that facilitates and enables the conversation you need to have, not necessarily the one you want to have. And as we had talked, you need to have a strategic one, but you have some great opportunities and things that you could do differently, better integration with the team. So it needed to be more spacious than rehashing the conversations you had in the past. So between kind of looking sometime in the future, taking you in a different channel is what we call it, drawing, and then personal sharing and really getting to know each other. Those three elements sets the stage for what you did 2 days later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think what I loved about that was we get to learn a lot more about each other, which of course we work closely together, but we are a virtual team. And so the personal stuff doesn't always get shared in the same way, especially when we're talking about personal goals, right? Like we maybe know some of the things going on in each other's lives, but we don't necessarily know like what does a good year look like to you, right? How could we help set you up for success in that? How could we cheer for you for those successes, right? And I really loved that. And I think it really got everybody in a place of just also feeling seen and heard, and I think that was really necessary walking into our virtual retreat. And then we did the exact same thing. So we kind of talked personally with you, what people were really looking for the best year ever for them personally. And then we did the exact same exercise for the business. And just the ideas that came out of that were so much more than had we started at okay, let's go through the to-do list, right? Like let's look at all those. And you're so right. There's so much exhaustion. We did have some of that during the retreat, but thankfully, it came on the heels of, here's the why we're doing this. Here's what we're excited about. Here's, not just like goals and metrics and blah, 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 right? It's like, we really understand why we're doing this. We really understand what our mission is. We really understand what we're trying to do next year. Yeah. And I think a lot of us had just a shift in like, oh, okay, like this is really what this is about. And I could just see that energy shift happen with my team. So I'm really appreciative that we had that exercise with you. And I'll say the other thing that I thought was just genius advice from Sarah that I'm going to have you give again, but talking about the pause, we talked about this when we had our debrief, but it was so beneficial. So Sarah, tell us a little bit if people are going in to like facilitate discussions, whether it's planning discussions with their team or anything like that, what do you recommend?
Yeah, well, and there's a couple of things. And I do want to go back. One thing that's important about doing the drawing is people share what they want to share. Yes. So if you have people who are private or introvert, this is not one of these things where you push people to do deep, dark secrets. They share whatever they want. And so in that, creates the safety. But then, it is important, and this is why you want to sometimes bring an outside facilitator. It doesn't have to necessarily be a professional like me, but it could be someone who's a neutral party, because you need the leader, Jamie, to be participant. And the hardest part for a leader who has been holding the container and the vision for a group that now needs to rise up and fill their own containers so the whole thing can grow is the instinct to speak and organize and such. So I gifted Jamie Trull the magic duct tape. And essentially what this meant is you take the duct tape and you put it over your mouth and you do not speak when you ask a question. Now that is horrifying. So we talked a little bit about Myers-Briggs. That was a really fun segue. But this idea that for those that tend towards extroversion, waiting 5 seconds feels like a minute, an hour. To someone who is, and it was funny because Jamie said, I hope I'm not telling tales out of confidential school, but she was like, it feels so long. It's so uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, for someone has tendency towards introversion and needs a process, it doesn't feel uncomfortable at all. Mm-hmm. So that pause, and so a couple things, counting to 10 before you speak, or what I like to say in my head, because it takes one to know one, is I can outweight you. And I can outweight you. And I keep saying it because I know it's so important that those of us who have an instinct to speak, can unintentionally send the message that we don't want to hear you, and that richness. And I think this is a testament to you that use the magic duct tape, because it creates space for others to speak and share. And that's one of the biggest mistakes I see with leaders is, I want to do this meeting, but they go back to the old habit of filling the space because they think people haven't caught up or you didn't explain enough, when in fact they just needed 5 more seconds before they step into the space. And with how we set that up, and then you doing it the next meeting, you start to see, there's a lot of richness here. And so again, magic duct tape counting, or I can outweight you, and any mind game you can do just to let that pause. It doesn't feel awful to everyone else, only to you.
Yeah. And that was really interesting because I have a team of introverts, and yet I speak for a living. This is what I do. Right.
Yeah.
So pauses to me and quietness to me, there's an awkward feeling. And I'm like, somebody's got to say something. Right. And so sometimes I will interject with something that has no value whatsoever. And now I've just stifled the conversation. And so I felt like the conversation, we started with this like big dreamy space, as you called it, right? Of like starting up here. And then I practiced just a lot of pausing and allowing that time and feeling awkward. I will tell you my tip, I had my coffee and I just made sure to keep it refilled. I drank way too much caffeine that day. But I would pose a question maybe, and then I would just sip very leisurely on my coffee because it made me feel less awkward than just sitting there and staring like a teacher calling on someone, right?
And here's the thing, sometimes the silence is them considering your question.
Yeah.
When you insert another question, which I do, because I'm like, oh, they don't understand my question. Now they need to think of the other one. So it almost restarts the thought process.
Yes.
So it's not that they didn't understand the question. It's that they're actually considering and want to give a thoughtful answer. Yeah. So I love the coffee thing. I actually do. I'll do water, or you can see me going like this. This is my tell. And people know it because they know I'm feeling whatever my instinctual 4-year-old self that wants to make noise, be seen, whatever it is, or who knows what it drives me to do it. But it's just like, sit in here. I can outweigh you. Whatever works.
Some of the best ideas and feedback came out of that. And it just allowed for a much more fulsome, I feel like, sharing. And it wasn't, leadership talking at. It was like a full conversation, which is really what we wanted. And we knew would be hard in a virtual setting. And yet we were still able to accomplish that. So I really appreciated some of that advice. And I thought everything went so well. But the first day of our retreat was absolutely my favorite because we got to do so much of this fun stuff. Then we had to get into the tactical, and that was exhausting. But then we all went and got like massages and our nails done. So separately. Perfect.
And that's the thing, you can do the tactical, and I see it. The teams know how to do tactical, and it's exhausting. And taking just some time to pause and stay in that bigger dreamy place just makes the tactical, you know how to do it. Everyone knows how to do it, or tends to err towards that. So I'm so glad you did. I'm so glad that what we hoped and dreamed would come out of it did.
Yeah, I thought it was fabulous. So I want to then lead to Sarah, tell them a little bit, if anybody is like, ooh, this sounds like something really cool that I would want to do with my team or personally or something like that. Where can they find you? What do you have coming up? We're recording this. This is coming out in the middle of November of 2023, but regardless of when you're watching this, I want you to go check out Sarah's site and see what she has. But what do you have some cool stuff coming up that I want people to know about?
Yeah. So on the corporate side and organization side, really, because I work at organizations, all sides. So if you're thinking about this for your company, you can always reach out to me at sarah@bettmanleadership.com, or go to Bettman Leadership and you can schedule a meeting there. For the individual, if you're individual, like, this is interesting, I want to do this for my life. And that's what's really fun about the work I do. Everything I do with corporate, you could turn around and do with your kids, with your significant other. Like, it's a really actually terribly fun event to do with your kids, because you start to understand the things that are on their minds. You can go to sarahbettman.com or livestoked.com. And what I have coming up is we're starting a membership called Live Stoked that's going live in mid-November. We understand it's awkward coming to a party before everyone shows up, as the case of this community. So we're offering it a deep discount at $36 a month, and you get a course, a series. This is basically my coaching process over the year as part of the membership, with resources and learning with each other. On the 28th, we're doing the best year ever as an open enrollment and public offering. And again, $36. So that was my lucky number in high school. So what the hell, that's what we're charging. And so you're welcome to join that. And so the other place you can find me is Linktree. And I don't remember where the period is, but I know you're going to put it in the show notes.
We'll put all the links and everything that we're mentioning, we'll put below. Don't worry.
Yeah. And Live Stoked in there. And you can join the newsletter if you just want to follow on, or if you want to attend, we'd love to have you. So
and that is, let me tell you, for all the things and all the amazing advice that you give, that is such a steal to be able to work with somebody like Sarah. who, I mean, is working with organizations and doing lots of big things out there for quite a bit more than $36, right? So you can get in and learn a lot of these things for a way cheaper price, which is amazing. So I love that you're doing this to help kind of some of the little guys to be able to really get some of this great feedback. So definitely go check all that out. I have all of that below. And then after you've checked all of that out, you can also check out, if you're looking now, okay, let's go strategic planning to the finance piece of strategic planning. I also have an annual planner that we just put out. It's been updated for 2024. So you can go to jamietrull.com/annual planner. And just as a teaser, we're also going to be doing the annual planning meeting again this year, which happens in January, which was super popular last year. So that's going to focus more on the numbers and planning for 2024 and for it really to be your best financial year ever. But I think that goes hand in hand with what we're talking about here, right? And I think a lot of times the people part, right? Like we sometimes as business owners, especially as CFOs, right? The CFO side of me, sometimes we can see the employee cost and engagement and all of that. It's just a line item on the P&L, right? It's an expense.
Yep.
But I absolutely know, like the CEO in me, however, knows that there is a massive return on investment, even if it's not something that you can very easily be able to measure on a spreadsheet, right? Having a team that feels supported and cared for, having a team that gels well together, right? Having aligned vision for the future, all of that is absolutely just, so important to the success of a business. It's not, you can have amazing profit margins, but if your team is struggling or unhappy, right? If you don't have the corporate culture that will actually cause your people to thrive, it will eventually cost you financially too, right? It will seep its way into that P&L one way or another.
I call it a multiplier.
Yeah.
It's a multiplier. And here's the thing, I do a lot of inclusion work, and this idea is if half your team, whatever the demographic that can't speak up, and it may not even just be a demographic, can't speak up, that's why it's lead stoked. If everyone's stoked, that evokes something, like everyone's engaged. It's like, right. The multiplier you get is when people are stoked about their vision, they're stoked about their idea, and they feel agency to live their goals, even if that means that time with you is to get experience so they get catapulted off to the next thing, right? And the best leaders I know are the ones that help me a friend said, you're in a relationship for a reason, season, or a lifetime. And I have mentors that I've known all my life, but I've had mentors that I had just for a reason. And the best ones are the ones that help me catapult to the next thing, even if that meant, no, you can't stay here. Like you've run out of your time here. You've outgrown us. So that's what we're talking about. And those conversations are multipliers. And agree with you 100%. Maybe we could save it for next time. I can show how you find it on the P&L.
Yes, for sure. I like that. All right, I'm writing that down for the follow-up for Sarah. Where do you see it on the P&L? But I loved this conversation. I really hope it's gotten some people thinking about how much more there is to having the best year ever than just hitting those financial goals, and how this type of thing and these types of conversations can really help you get there. So thanks for coming, Sarah. We'll have you back sometime. And thank you for helping our team as well. And everybody go check out all of Sarah's stuff below. So thanks for joining us, everybody. I hope that you have the absolute best year ever in this coming year. And definitely go check out my new 2023 annual planning guide at jamietrull.com/annual planner. See you later.